The woman in the dream was awakened by the sound of her cell phone vibrating. She quickly got up to look for the source of the sound. She saw that more than 10 cell phones were making noise. When she saw the message on the screen, she immediately ran downstairs and used a hammer to smash all the cell phones. Then, she threw all the SIM cards into the blender to destroy them completely. Everything was ready, and the woman opened the door of the villa. A moment later, a fully armed police team arrived at the door of the villa. Hearing footsteps outside, she immediately walked out the door. This woman, who was arrested by a large force of police, was a drug dealer. Her story was also considered a legend in the industry. She was the beautiful Spanish drug queen named Olympia. Olympia originally had a happy family, a loving husband, and 2 lovely daughters. But since her husband was diagnosed with cancer, her life completely collapsed. Her husband's unemployment benefits for 2 months were not enough to support the family. Moreover, her 3rd child was about to be born. She had no choice but to take her 2 daughters to the nearby supermarket and start stealing. She took advantage of the guards' inattention to stuff the goods into her little daughter's cart. In order not to arouse suspicion when paying, she bought a small box of chewing gum. However, her daughter's puffy jacket still attracted the attention of the cashier. As they walked out of the store, the 3 quickly left. But before they had gone a few steps, the items hidden in her daughter's clothes began to fall out. Soon, the supermarket security guard caught up with them and took them to the boss. The boss saw the 2 children and did not call the police. But Olympia didn't care at all. For someone who was about to go hungry, honor was worthless. It was thought that after this failure, Olympia would stop. Her daughter asked her what to do now. She said they should go to a Chinese store now. In the end, she still brought back some food from the Chinese supermarket. But this didn't last long. At night, taking advantage of the time when her family was fast asleep, she went to the restaurant downstairs to steal a few packets of sugar. Her movements were quick and decisive. It was obvious that she was used to this. At this time, a woman who secretly sold cigarettes appeared in the store. Her appearance completely changed Olympia's fate. The girl named Marga was Olympia's high school classmate. In order to sustain her life, Olympia offered to join her friend Marga in the cigarette business. Marga was also very excited about this, because under the cover of her pregnancy status, she could not only sell more goods, but also bear the risk of being caught. So the 2 officially cooperated. Although the percentage Marga took was very high, the cigarette business made money faster and more than normal jobs. Olympia went to her close friend Trini, a hairdresser, and asked Trini to look after her 2 children. In return, she gave her 2 high-purity Happy cigarettes. Olympia then went to the nearby square and started selling cigarettes. Every day when she returned home, she stuffed the money she earned into the detergent box. She was freed from worrying about food. Occasionally, she also took her 2 children to a restaurant for a sumptuous meal. But things did not always go smoothly. That day, Olympia and Marga met a man named Marco on the road who had just been released from prison. He was a notorious gangster in this area. The business area of the 2 people happened to be within his sphere of influence. Faced with Marco's threats, Marga obediently handed over the money, and she also told Olympia to hand over all the cigarettes. Unhappy to see her way of making money fall into the hands of the opponent, she went into the bakery next door, grabbed the knife on the counter, and chased after him. Surely, this thug had never seen such a crazy woman in his life. When the knife was placed against his neck, his aggressive attitude turned to fear. Then she said she could sell it anywhere she wanted and chased him away. However, something that made Olympia more worried happened. During a family gathering, Olympia's brother Manuel discovered her secret. Once her father knew about this, she would most likely be kicked out of the house. For traditional Spanish women, their responsibility was to take care of their husbands and children and manage the family well. But no one knew the reason Olympia did so was very simple. She wanted to earn money to cure her husband's illness. Therefore, no one could stop her determination. Olympia warned Manuel not to tell their parents about this and not to tell Alex. Otherwise, she would kill him. That day, Olympia and Marga went to the square to do business as usual. But suddenly a car appeared on the road, attracting her attention. The person in the car was the thug she had held by the neck earlier. Seeing the car running towards Marga, Olympia quickly called out to remind her to pay attention. But unexpectedly, it was still too late. Just as Marga turned around, Marco pulled out a gun, aimed at her, and pulled the trigger. After 2 gunshots, Marga immediately fell to the ground. Then Marco continued to fire 2 more shots at Olympia. Luckily, Olympia reacted quickly and hid behind the bench, so she escaped death. At this time, Marco did not dare to stop for long, so he turned the car around and quickly fled. After Marco left, Olympia came to Marga's side, but she lay motionless on the ground. Her breathing had stopped for a long time. At Marga's funeral, Marga's brother came to Olympia. He asked who killed his sister. Surely she knew. From that day on, Marga's brother led Olympia to start searching for Marco's whereabouts on the streets. They found Marco very quickly. Marga's brother immediately got out of the car car and walked in front of Marco. Without saying a word, he pulled out a gun and shot Marco straight in the head. This shot not only avenged Marga, but also completely eliminated the threat of Olympia. But Marga's departure still made Olympia extremely sad. Olympia realized that the risk of crime was something she could not bear. So Olympia threw all the cigarettes in the trash, intending to return to her family and continue a stable life. But unexpectedly, her water broke at this time. Their family welcomed their third child. Thanks to the money saved from selling drugs in the past, Olympia was able to temporarily maintain her current family life. Meanwhile, Olympia's husband, Alex, not only did not help, but he became more and more negative due to his illness. He also refused to cooperate with the treatment. After persuading him unsuccessfully, she once again went to see a doctor. The doctor concluded that if the current situation continued, Alex would only have a maximum of 1.5 years left. She asked if it could be cured. The doctor shook his head. She did not believe the doctor's conclusion. Olympia started to look up information online. An article about a famous singer being cured of cancer caught her attention. The hospital, which was claimed to have a 90% cure rate, was imprinted in her mind, and the expensive treatment costs made her turn to drug trafficking once again. If she wanted to continue selling cigarettes, she had to find a supplier, but no one knew where Marga got the goods from before, so this path was completely deadlocked. At this moment, Trini thought of someone and asked Olympia if she knew Valeria. Through Trini's introduction, Olympia met Valeria and her husband. They had been trading drugs for a long time. By chance, their freight forwarder unfortunately died in a car accident, and they were now looking for a trustworthy person to take over. The next day, when Olympia received the assignment, she drove her motorbike to a remote villa. Here, Olympia met her dealer named Giulio. Olympia took the drugs from Giulio and brought them back to Valeria and her husband to finish the job. But transporting goods also had risks. On the road, at any time, she could encounter police checkpoints. But for Olympia, these were not problems. She was familiar with every street here and could easily bypass police checkpoints. She received a handsome salary. Just like before, she stuffed money into a laundry basket and wrote down the numbers in a small notebook. When she was not busy, Olympia thought of all kinds of ways to persuade Alex. She even hired an actor to pretend to be a relative's friend to give him psychological counseling. As a result, Alex kicked that person out of the house after just a few sentences. Seeing that it was ineffective, Olympia put her hope in witch doctors and black magic. Although she knew these things were just spiritual comforts, as long as they could help change her mood, she would not hesitate to spend money to try. She did not expect a miracle to happen. She just hoped that Alex could hold out until the day he went to America for treatment. But things were not as simple as she thought. That day, Olympia returned after picking up the goods from Giulio as usual. Olympia always delivered the goods to Valeria, but today, she was not home. Valeria's husband picked up the goods, but he did not pay and even wanted to commit a depraved act. Olympia took the ashtray next to him and hit him hard on the head. Just then, Valeria came home. The man immediately accused Olympia of wanting to rob her. Olympia intended to take the money and leave, but unexpectedly, Valeria pulled out a knife. Olympia knew she was in a typical unlucky situation, but Olympia had learned her lesson from Marga before. This time could only endure. At night, Olympia was awakened by loud talking. When Olympia went to her daughter's room, she found Alex trying to take 2 children and leave the house. Realizing that something was wrong, she took advantage of the moment when her husband was packing up the children's things and used a cooking pan to beat Alex unconscious. Then she took her 2 daughters to the restaurant downstairs. Then she quietly waited for the ambulance to arrive. After the doctor examined her, he announced that Alex had a mental disorder caused by depression. At the doctor's recommendation, Olympia chose to have her husband hospitalized. Just when she was feeling helpless, a man took the initiative to come to her. This man's name was Moreno, a friend of Giulio. After Giulio learned about Valeria and her husband's behavior, he introduced Olympia to Moreno. Giulio assured her that this man was trustworthy. At that time, Olympia did not know that this man would completely change her fate. Olympia's mission was to go to Colombia to join the team and bring back goods. This was completely different from the job in Galicia. It was really different, but the profit was 10 times higher. She needed to transport 30 kilograms of goods. The salary she could receive was about $80,000. Olympia was immediately moved when she heard this, but after the previous bad luck, she became more careful. Trust can only be experienced by yourself when cooperating, because this is an illegal transaction that cannot rely on an agreement to protect the interests of both parties. So Olympia said she needed time to consider. Moreno also gave Olympia 2 days. But what happened next helped her make a decision quickly. The next day, she prepared to take her children out. Unexpectedly, her parents appeared at the door. At the dining table, her father felt thirsty, so he went to the kitchen to pour water. But the new refrigerator in front of him made the old man suspicious. Then, he called his daughter into another room. He knew she was having a hard time and that she might be doing something illegal. So he said that if she had any difficulties, they could help. Her father's words deeply hurt her. Although he meant well, she knew that no one could help her except herself. So after her parents left, she immediately sent a message to Moreno, agreeing to cooperate. The next day, she brought her luggage to the airport. Unexpectedly, as soon as she got off the plane, she was followed by someone else. It seemed that this trip to Colombia would not go smoothly. Since this was Olympia's first time going abroad without her family's knowledge, she couldn't help but feel nervous. Under the invitation of a taxi driver, she got in the car and went to the hotel she had booked in advance. The driver's enthusiasm and humor made Olympia feel less nervous. Soon the car stopped in front of a luxury hotel. Olympia got out of the car and confirmed the address with the driver. Only after making sure that she wasn't in the wrong place did she pay. Before leaving, the driver left her a business card and said that if anything happened, she could call him at any time. It was Olympia's first time staying in a luxury hotel, but she didn't feel excited. She just wanted to get the goods quickly and leave, because at home she had 3 children and a sick husband waiting for her to take care of. Each envelope on the bedside table contained cash and a mobile phone that Moreno had prepared for Olympia. A few minutes later, Moreno called and told her the bad news. There was a problem with the supplier, so the delivery time had to be postponed 2 days. Olympia refused to postpone the pickup time because they had agreed. Moreno said that sometimes things could not be avoided. She told him that he was making things difficult for her because she had another family to take care of. He assured her that she would be back within 3 days. She felt disappointed by the sudden change of plans, but thinking that this trip could earn her $80,000, she still called her mother and lied that her cousin was about to have surgery. So she had to stay and take care of her cousin for 2 more days. After Olympia finished her family matters, she immediately called Moreno and said that she only had 2 days. He should arrange to get the goods as soon as possible. She asked him what she should do in these 2 days. He told her to consider it a vacation with 4 friends. Enjoy it, but don't go out at night because it's too dangerous. His men were waiting for her downstairs in the lobby. Don't forget that she was their commander. Let them remember this clearly. Olympia came before the 4 subordinates and announced her status as leader. The subordinates' minds immediately froze. They didn't expect their commander to be a young woman. They were about to introduce themselves when Olympia stopped them. In a strange city facing a group of strangers, it was best not to use their real names. For convenience, she gave each person a nickname. The curly-haired guy was Fofo, the fat guy was Gordo, the muscular guy was Cautious, the skinny guy was Guaperas. The others didn't object to their nicknames. Only the curly-haired guy didn't understand what his name meant. What did it mean to be a clown on television? A famous clown? Under Olympia's guidance, they had fun on the beach all day. Unexpectedly, when they returned to the hotel at night, something happened. Guaperas sneaked out without telling anyone. When Olympia searched his suitcase, she found his passport. With the help of the taxi driver, Olympia finally learned Guaperas' whereabouts. It turned out that he had gone to a nearby bar. The taxi driver's friend was the one who had led him. Olympia went to the bar and found Guaperas. Without saying a word, she took his passport out of her pocket and told him to either go back to the hotel or find his own way back to Spain. With that, she turned and walked out the door. Having no other choice, Guaperas obediently followed Olympia into the taxi. Early the next morning, Olympia received a call from Moreno. The goods were ready to be picked up at any time. Olympia then gathered her subordinates and prepared to leave. The 4 of them took 2 cars, but Olympia sent the address to the taxi driver. Compared to the others, the driver was more trustworthy. Following the taxi, everyone arrived at an abandoned factory outside the city. Entering the factory, they met the supplier. Knowing that Olympia was the person Moreno had to pick up the goods, he called her aside to check the goods. But Olympia said she was only checking the quantity, not quality. She didn't know whether the buyer and seller were deceitful or not. Her mission was to get the goods out of here. But things weren't as simple as she thought. At this time, the supplier had an idea, and her 4 subordinates outside were also restrained. Faced with this situation, Olympia was not afraid. Taking advantage of the other party's inattention, she picked up a dart on the table and stabbed him hard in the hand. After finishing, Olympia took her bag and led her men out of the factory. As for the hotel, everyone celebrated. After the party, Olympia called Guaperas aside. Knowing that he could speak English, she gave him her phone to contact the hospital in the US to ask the doctor about cancer treatment. But Guaperas' clumsy English made the other party mistake him for a drunkard calling. After a few sentences, they hung up. Olympia then took the phone back and chased him out of the room. When Guaperas left the room and saw that no one was there, he immediately took out his phone and sent a message to a mysterious person. It turned out that he was the spy who secretly informed the subordinate of Abel, Moreno's nemesis, of the time to return to Spain tomorrow. Upon receiving the news, Abel ordered his subordinates to deal with Moreno's internal liaison at at the airport. Abel's purpose was clear: to rob Moreno's goods and kill the people sent to get them. The next day, according to the plan, Olympia divided the drugs into small packages. Then she used plastic wrap to wrap the subordinates. When everything was ready, everyone brought their luggage to the airport. The driver was still the one who took them. Inside the airport, Abel's subordinates were ready. They were just waiting for Olympia and the others to appear. But on the way, Moreno suddenly called. Because the internal liaison at the airport had a problem, everyone was forced to change their plans to another airport. The situation changed, and Guaperas immediately sent the news out. Because Guaperas was too nervous, his actions made Cautious suspicious. Cautious immediately grabbed Guaperas's phone and gave it to Olympia. After Olympia saw the message, she realized that there was a spy next to her. Guaperas wanted to jump in the car and escape, but it was too late. They couldn't go to the airport or the hotel. The driver took them to a small hotel owned by his friend. Although it was normal, it was quite safe. Cautious and a few others stripped Guaperas of all his clothes and tied him to the seat. Olympia tore up Guaperas's passport in front of everyone, preparing to let him die there. Then she used his phone to send a message to Abel's subordinates. She used vulgar words to ask about Abel's family, but Cautious couldn't accept a traitor to the organization. Taking advantage of the moment when no one was paying attention, he brought a steel bar to Guaperas and killed Guaperas on the spot. The spy was dead. Everyone drove to a deserted place. Following Olympia's instructions, the subordinates threw Guaperas's body into the lake. Very quickly, Olympia received another call. The buyer requested to end the mission of transporting goods across the border. Because there was an insider, the drugs they were holding in their team had to be returned to the supplier. To ensure their safety, the other side also prepared a safe retreat route for them. But for Olympia, this was not only a failure, but also a humiliation. However, her determined and indomitable nature predestined that she would not give up easily. At this time, a painting on the wall gave her a clue. Olympia immediately called the taxi driver. At this time, Olympia was still trying to find a way to transport the goods. She had no idea that her mother had gone to her cousin's house in the countryside. Olympia's lie had also been exposed. In addition, she had paid her cousin and her daughter to help her, but no one knew what she was doing. At this time, Olympia had arrived at port with the help of the driver. She wanted to find a boat that didn't need to go through customs inspection to transport the goods. After many attempts, she finally found a captain willing to help her transport the goods. The two of them agreed on the transportation issue and considered it resolved. After dealing with this, the driver took Olympia to the road station. To express her gratitude, Olympia gave the driver a large sum of money, but this time he didn't accept it. After a few days of contact, he realized that this girl was not simple, and for Olympia, the biggest gain of this trip to Colombia was the driver. When parting, she told him her real name. According to the route Moreno provided, Olympia returned to Spain safely. The first thing Olympia did when she returned was to go to the hospital to pick up her husband. At the dinner table, Olympia's mother called her into the kitchen. Before Olympia could say anything, she was suddenly slapped by her mother. Her mother said, "I won't slap you in public." To show respect for her husband and father, she sat down. She did not betray her husband, she just wanted to cure his illness. Not only that, she also wanted the whole family to have a good life. But these things could not be said, because she did not want her mother to worry. Her job was illegal, so it was difficult for her to say it. That day, after Olympia picked up her child from school, when she arrived downstairs, she saw a large number of police officers setting up a barricade. Olympia asked the neighbors around and learned that police had come to arrest the drug dealer, but the target was not her building. When she got home, she quickly took out the money hidden in the box because she thought the police had come to arrest her. But when she put the money in her bag, her husband walked in through the door and grabbed the bag. When Alex saw the money, Olympia knew she could not hide it anymore, so she admitted to her husband that she was a drug dealer. She put the money in his hand and told him to take the children and leave. After Alex left, Olympia went downstairs to her best friend's garage and prepared to escape. Unexpectedly, as soon as she turned the corner, she was stopped by a police officer. After she rolled down the car window, the officer looked inside the car and saw nothing, so he waved her away. Not long after, Alex received a call that the blockade of the area had been lifted. Olympia told Alex to take the children home. When they watched the news, they learned that police had arrested 2 members of a terrorist organization that day. A mistake that made Olympia extremely nervous. She told her husband that she made money from drug trafficking. Everything she did was for him. He told her not to lie. She wanted to take him to the United States for treatment. There were trials of advanced treatments that were not available in Spain, but he said they didn't have that much money. She said they would have money. Unexpectedly, Alex didn't appreciate it at all. He even warned her not to leave the house in the future. She had to be by his side every day. However, the stubborn husband also completely understood his wife's feelings. He just didn't want her to take such a big risk for him. That night, both of them were silent and couldn't sleep. The next day, Alex immediately called Olympia's father. With his wife's personality, he couldn't control her. He could only tell her father what happened. He hoped that her father could convince her to quit that job. That day, coincidentally, was also the day the cargo ship arrived at the port. According to the scheduled time, Olympia arrived at the dock. After paying the fee, several subordinates walked out of the ship's hold. Then, according to the address Moreno provided, everyone went to a warehouse. This was where they delivered the goods. Taking advantage of the moment, Cassius and the others entered the warehouse. Moreno went to the car and paid the shipping fee to Olympia. As a result, when she returned home with the money in her hand, she found her father waiting downstairs. Olympia had thought that this day would come sooner or later. She just didn't expect it to come so quickly. Her father advised her to stop. As long as she went home and focused on taking care of her husband and children, the previous events could be considered as if they had never happened. Olympia unexpectedly refused outright because now she could no longer turn back. Then she told him the real reason. Her father would never earn that much money in his life. In the end, the advice didn't work, so the old man turned around and quietly left. From that day on, her parents cut off contact with her. Meanwhile, Moreno's biggest enemy always remembered Olympia. Abel had sent assassins to prepare to eliminate the woman who dared to scold him. Olympia was not idle at this time. She knew that the goods she brought back had been transported to Italy, and the shipper had taken 40% of the profits from it. So Olympia discussed with Moreno that she could also do this transport, and so the two continued to cooperate. Olympia once again expanded her own drug trafficking network. She relied on her own abilities to open an exclusive international freight route. To take care of her family, she assigned the cross-border drug transport job to her subordinates. Meanwhile, she maintained the rear and developed new sales channels with her partners. Seeing that Olympia was making money from drug trafficking, her close friend Trini also did not accept Trini relying only on the barbershop to make a living. Therefore, Trini proposed to do business with Olympia. Unexpectedly, she refused. It was not because Trini was not capable enough or she was not trustworthy, but because Olympia did this when she was at her wit's end. She did not want to fall into such a dangerous situation herself. What if Trini was killed like Marga? Olympia's worries were not in vain because the Colombian drug lord's assassin had been sent, and the main target was this Spanish girl. That day, the assassin Orson found a good opportunity. Moreno and Olympia went out to talk privately. Recently, Moreno had contacted an Italian customer. If they successfully negotiated the price, the goods could be shipped to Italy in 10 days. But now they had a little trouble. The Italians liked to do business directly, and they would be here next week. The important thing was that they did not like having women in charge in this industry. If Moreno showed up, it would break the rules and be bad for business. So he could only let Olympia find a way. Then Moreno stood up to pay. Orson was watching the two. He kept waiting for the right opportunity to pull out his gun and kill Olympia. But before he could pull out his gun, he was so nervous that his heart was pounding and his legs were shaking. As a result, he missed the perfect assassination opportunity. He could only watch the two people leave right in front of him. That evening, Orson returned to the hotel to watch police and crime movies on TV to improve his killing skills. Later, his sister called to ask if he was okay. To prove that he could become an excellent assassin, he swore that the next time he had the chance, he would definitely kill that woman. The next day, the opportunity he had been waiting for came. Olympia went to Manuel to ask him to pretend to be the boss. Just as the two were studying Italian, their cousin Isa called. Olympia's eldest daughter had a stomachache and was taken to the hospital. Olympia and Cassius immediately drove away from the factory. They did not notice a motorcycle following closely behind. After the doctor checked, Olympia's daughter only had mild gastritis. When they left the hospital, the two of them sat on the bench in front of the door. Taking advantage of the time when Cassius and Isa went to get the car, Orson walked to the door, then slowly walked in front of Olympia, pulled out a gun, aimed at her, and shot. However, the scene just now was just a fantasy. Just as he was about to act, a police car came from the opposite side and stopped in front of the door. After the two policemen escorted the prisoner into the hospital, the police car left. Seeing that the danger had passed, Orson walked towards Olympia again. But before Orson could take a few steps, Cassius drove up. The two of them quickly left the hospital. Orson once again missed the opportunity to become an excellent killer. As soon as everyone left, Abel called. Orson's legs went weak and he looked at the shaking phone in his hand, not daring to answer. Orson returned to the hotel, and the phone rang again. Seeing that his sister was calling, he quickly pressed the answer button. But he didn't expect that person on the other end of the line was Abel. Abel knew that the assassination attempt had failed again, so he gave Orson one last chance. After returning from the hospital, Olympia went to see her mother and begged her to persuade her father to meet her. If their relationship could not be repaired, she would never be able to set foot in her mother's house. Under her mother's persuasion, her father agreed to meet and talk with her. Olympia decided to leave leave the business to her brother to manage while she returned home to live a normal life with her husband and children. She thought that this delaying measure could temporarily resolve the family crisis, but her father understood her daughter too well. Although Manel was very talented, he was a coward and absolutely not the right person to deal drugs. On the contrary, Olympia had a strong personality and worked decisively. She always wanted to become the person that others said she could not become. When she was little, her father had told her she would do something great, but she didn't care about this kind of thing. The plan failed and father and son parted ways. Soon, the day came to meet the Italian gang boss. But during the price negotiation, Manel really thought of himself as the boss. While he had absolutely no understanding of the industry, he lost 10% of his bargaining power. Fortunately, Moreno was there to save the day. The two sides finally reached an agreement. Olympia heard the whole process clearly through Moreno's phone. It seemed that her father was right. Manel really wasn't someone capable of trafficking drugs. But now that the time had come, Olympia could only move on. Back at the factory, they put the drugs into modified cars. To show Italian pride, Manel would personally escort the first shipment. After all, in the eyes of the Italians, he was still the boss. But Moreno expressed concern about this. Could these two people really be trusted? Tonight, Moreno lured Olympia into the city. He wanted to do something he had wanted to do for a long time, but had never done before. That was to take a sightseeing bus to experience the feeling of being a tourist. Since the tickets were sold out, he bought 2 tickets at a high price from a couple. Orson, who was following behind them, snatched the tickets from a child's hand. After the bus passed an intersection, Orson slowly stood up and prepared to act. Coincidentally, Olympia wanted to switch seats with Moreno. Orson rushed forward with a gun. Olympia immediately pushed Orson down and pulled Moreno off the bus. Orson chased after them and quickly caught up with the two. Unexpectedly, when Orson raised his gun, a car next to him quickly rushed forward and stabbed him. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the two quickly escaped. Orson, who dreamed of becoming an excellent assassin, lay dead in the middle of the road in frustration. At the same time, Manel, who was transporting goods for the first time, also had an accident. To fight off drowsiness while driving, he kept drinking energy drinks. Soon, Manel felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart. He immediately called Fofo, the passenger, to wake him up, but at this time, he had lost his senses. In a panic, the car flipped over and landed on the grass next to it. Drugs hidden under the car were also scattered everywhere. Olympia had just escaped death when she quickly received the news. In order to avoid the killer from appearing again, Olympia took her whole family out of the house that night. On the way, Olympia called Moreno to report that she was safe. She knew he was investigating the killer's background, so she silently hung up and waited for the results. When she discovered that a car was following her, she immediately became nervous. Mr. Gordo, who was driving, did not react. She did not pay too much attention. A moment later, the car stopped in front of a villa. This was a house provided by Moreno's friend. She could stay indefinitely. When Olympia was about to get off the car, she saw the car from before chasing after them. After getting off the car, a bald man got out of the car and walked towards them. He was the personal bodyguard that Moreno had arranged for Olympia. After Olympia arranged for the family to wait for the children to sleep, she went out of the villa. Not long after, Manel also drove here. Because the truck had an accident, Moreno immediately sent someone to take Manel and Fofo back, but the remaining goods on the truck were insignificant. The goods were not delivered on time, so they had to give a reasonable explanation to the customer. Olympia naturally could not ignore the trouble caused by Manel. Therefore, the two of them prepared to come to the city themselves to explain the situation to the customer. But unexpectedly, Manel's wife insisted on following him just because he came back in unkempt clothes. She believed that her husband had a lover outside, so she wanted to sit in the car and see what they wanted to do. Olympia had no choice but to take Manel's wife along. On the way, Moreno called to say that he had identified the killer who sent the message from Abel. After more than 20 hours of driving, everyone finally arrived in Italy. According to the address provided by the other party, Olympia and everyone met the buyer. Manel explained in Italian why the goods could not arrive on time and promised that they could give a higher discount next time. But the Italian partner did not accept it and thought he was being tricked. The bodyguard beside him picked up a gun. It seemed that these people wanted to deal with them on the spot. Olympia still wanted to explain a little more, but Italians did not like to work with women. Olympia then announced his identity as a drug lord to the buyer. She explained again why the goods were not delivered. She said that if the other party paid a part of the deposit, she would be willing to give them a discount next time. Seeing that the woman in front of her was extremely capable, the Italian immediately changed his attitude and agreed to a week. On the way back, while everyone was chatting, Manel's wife accidentally mentioned that Olympia's parents were going to hold a wedding anniversary party. After she finished talking, she realized that Olympia had not been invited. On the day of the party, Olympia brought her children. When she left, she met distant relatives. They always greeted her warmly, but now they all pretended not to know her, to avoid getting involved. Olympia saw this scene and found it difficult to accept. She immediately asked her bodyguard to take her home. A moment later, she changed into her formal dress and returned to the party. The party atmosphere was originally lively, but with her appearance, suddenly became silent. In front of everyone, Olympia revealed her true intention of just wanting to change her life. But unexpectedly, her behavior made her parents feel ashamed. After a big argument, her father announced the end of the party. Just like that, she became the most unwelcome person in the family. Among everyone, only Olympia's younger sister, Isa, understood. Olympia returned home and found an empty bottle of sleeping pills in the bathroom. The disappearance of the sleeping pills made her feel that something was wrong. When she went to the kitchen, she saw her husband making waffles. After Olympia questioned Alex, he finally admitted that he mixed sleeping pills into the flour. He wanted to take the children away before she did. Just as Olympia walked out of the kitchen, Alex chased after her, acting extremely agitated. Just as she reached the stairs, she suddenly saw a bodyguard in front of her. When she turned back, he had already restrained her crazy husband. To prevent her husband from harming himself, she went to Alex's brother and paid him $600 a week to take care of this crazy man. At this time, Olympia had another problem. Cassius, who was sent to assassinate Abel, was accidentally recognized by someone else. Cassius saw that his identity was exposed, so he quickly contacted Moreno. But at this time, Moreno was lying on the empty ground outside the casino. It was unclear whether he was alive or dead. Cassius had no choice but to call Olympia. She told him to run away, but it was too late to run away. Abel's subordinates pointed a gun at Cassius's head. After Cassius said goodbye, he fell down. Her junior died tragically abroad. As for her partner, it was unknown whether he was alive or dead. Only Olympia was left alone. How will she deal with the next challenges? Today's movie ends here. See you again in the next videos.